All right, it's time for a game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Robin and I have your game preview, and we're going to talk about the Utah Hockey Club's growing playoff chances. All that and more coming your way in the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. I'm veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, joined by longtime team analyst Robin Leano, and together we are your dynamic duo for the Utah Hockey Club. We talk about it every single day. We appreciate you being here. Give us a subscribe, a follow, a like, whatever it is. You want to send us a little candy hearts, that's fine too. But follow along because it's going to be a tremendous stretch run here through the trade deadline and beyond for the Utah Hockey Club as Robin, Chicago coming to town on a Tuesday night here. And this is a stretch, the last little bit of this home stretch here coming out of Four Nations where, first of all, looking over our shoulder, 1-1 on the weekend, lost at LA, but a huge home win against Vancouver Sunday.
Absolutely, a really huge home win over there, and with that win, Tom, it really puts playoff hopes back. Right, we were talking about that earlier. It's like, hey, maybe this is happening. Maybe they could go in the right direction.
Coming into this game, Utah's one game over NHL 500. They're 25-24-9. That's 59 points. Mm-hmm. And really in a position where Vancouver is still that last team in the Western Conference wildcard spot. You're 4 points behind them. So a chance to make hay while the sun shines, especially against a Blackhawks team, second worst in the conference, 17-33-7. Robin, they've gone 0-2 since coming back from Four Nations. They've given up 5 goals in both of those games. Things aren't going well for the Blackhawks, and this is a team that knows it's going to start to dismantle itself coming up here. Seth Jones, it is very public knowledge now that he has asked for a trade out to a contending team, but there's other pieces in Chicago as well. I mean, you look at Connor Murphy. He's 31, and, he's a guy who's never played a Stanley Cup playoff game, but maybe he might be on the way out. And now he played 9 games in the bubble with Edmonton, by the way, Connor Murphy did, but I guess he doesn't necessarily count that. I would count that if it were me. But there's a lot of questions, way more questions than answers surrounding the Blackhawks as they try to get through the end of the season. And so, Robin, it sounds like they're in a downward flight here, and all these things going on, the uncertainty. And to me, this game screams classic trap game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is one of the things where, it's easy to get complacent. It's easy to take a look at all the issues the Chicago Blackhawks have been through. And you mentioned, you listed them all. And I think in general, ever since they parted ways with Taylor Hall, it kind of it started. That's when things took an even extra nosedive. Not it was already going good for them in the first place, and it's easy for some of these players to get a little complacent and be like, "Yeah, we got this game." But when things are just this high stakes, that's where it can be that trap. That's where it can easily get behind Utah, and all of a sudden they're down, and it looks like what just happened.
And they have, Chicago still has Connor Bedard.
They still do.
A very dangerous player. He's got 49 points in 57 games this year. Ryan Donato's got 19 goals. He leads the team in that category. They're still a good team full of NHL players, and any team can beat anybody else on any given night. But Robin, the other thing for Utah is every 2 points is so important right now, especially in regulation. But for Utah, you come off that big win over Vancouver. I don't want to see a letdown.
No, especially too with what felt like the momentum that they got from that, right? Like you could just see what the energy was like at Delta Center, and you're like, yeah, why would you want to? Why would you want to tarnish that with a loss to when we can even say it, a incredibly terrible Blackhawks team.
Yeah, and you have to take advantage of the teams that are underneath you in the standings. And just looking at Utah's calendar this week, it is Tuesday, Chicago. So that's the game we're talking about right now. And then Thursday, Minnesota. That is at home. And then Saturday, New Jersey. That's the end of the homestand before you go the following week to Detroit, Chicago, back to back. But those games, Jersey's a better team on paper. Minnesota's a better team on paper, but you're playing at home. You should be able to pick up these points. You need to pick up these points, and you can't look past Chicago. But I think that they could come out with 6 more points yet.
They really can. And I think, to me, what it starts with, Tom, and we could probably get into it as we progress through this show, but it starts with, and it's a term I used before earlier on the season when it comes to teams that are lower on in the standings, a quote statement win. What I mean by that is a commanding win. Like, no question about it. It's like it was a cruise level game. Like, it's like it looks like it was easy for them. That's kind of what separates, playoff teams versus non-playoff teams, right? Teams that are a little bit struggling and teams that are vying, and or have quote Stanley Cup hopes. The ones that have Stanley Cup hopes, they know they're the better team, and they will. But despite knowing they're the better team, they will still give it their all every single day.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, Robin, things that we get a little excited about here, we get excited about a healthy decor. We get excited about, the goaltending kind of coming back online here. We get excited about Dylan Guenther, getting, back on track, and Josh Doan looking good. And after his little stint in Tucson there, and it just kind of, getting healthy all through the lineup, and all these things to get excited about. And that big win over Vancouver, that's another thing you can carry with you. And I thought they played a very good game against Vancouver. Defensively, they checked all the boxes. They shut down Vancouver's attack. They outplayed the Canucks at home. But Robin, who's lurking around the corner, don't you? It's our old buddy, consistency. And so now we need to see the consistency. Now we're talking game-to-game consistency.
Yeah, they gotta break the cycle of cycles, right? That's the better way to put it. They gotta break the cycle of cycles where they can't have a stretch where they'll beat like the 7 best teams in the league, but then like there's then their next 7 games are against like the 7 worst teams in the league, and they all of a sudden just like go like 1 for 6, 1 for 7, only one, getting 2 points out of the, possible like 14. Like, that's a team that we've seen happen to this Utah Hockey Club. That cannot happen. This is what we want to see them consistently bring this back. I will say, Tom, in this case, it's more of a hope than a prediction in this case because we don't know, but I still have the extra bit of hope, and you mentioned it, because this team has a now practically fully healthy defense, at least when we're talking about the top 4 here. It at least gives me hope that there will be a steadier pace of how that blue line is managed. Previous to the healthy D, it was just, and you and I have talked about it, chaos.
Yeah, because you never know who was in, who was out. Unfortunately, you knew actually who was out quite a bit. And that was the downside, right? Yeah. At one point, we were missing 3 of the top 4. So that's not the case anymore. And I think that's a tremendous growing point for the Utah Hockey Club. In fact, I want to talk a little bit more about that. And we're also going to talk a little bit more about Chicago here. And we'll go back and look at that playoff chase again here for you in just a moment. But coming up tonight, Chicago Blackhawks, 7 o'clock on the puck drop here. We're back with more in a moment. And today's show is brought to you in part by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. Well, how can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in this position as well. The team that I work for currently, I mean, we've needed, as a matter of fact, we are just about to embark on another hiring blitz because when someone leaves in the middle of the season, it's difficult. There's pressure on you to replace that person with the right person to make sure that you fill in all the gaps and get somebody up to speed as quickly as possible. And that's when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. Tom Callahan, Robin Leano here with you in the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate you being here as we're breaking down the Chicago Blackhawks coming to town Tuesday night, 7 o'clock puck drop at the Delta Center. Robin, the other thing that we've talked about, making hay while the sun shines at home for Utah. Big win against Vancouver Sunday, but they're still a sub 500 team at home, 10-12-6 versus 15-12-3 on the road. Not a huge difference. They're almost to 500 at home. It is still a little weird to me that this team hasn't quite found that winning secret sauce on the home ice yet.
Yeah, and it is a little bit of a concern, Tom, but part of me has a feeling, and maybe this could be the case, that and you kind of alluded to it in one of our previous shows earlier this week, is just maybe that the Four Nations break was just everything Utah needed. I mean, for the health of this team, but B, also just for the reset, just kind of get things going, and maybe getting a little bit of break now, all the fans just get that extra hype back. Maybe the fans got a little bit of break too, and they're like, yeah, let's go right back to it.
I think what's cool too is coming out of the break, you get a player almost like you traded for him in Sean Durzi, because he really hasn't been there most of the year. It's almost like a big time defensive acquisition.
Because he went down in game 4 of this season.
Yep. And it's crazy to think it. In a way, it feels like yesterday, but it also feels like it was 12 years ago, with the length of the NHL season.
Not only that, but it's because of the all the hoops that Utah had to jump through to try to patch up the defense.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, the trades, the waiver pickups, the shuffling, call ups, and man, they've gone through a lot this year. They really have. The fact that they are still swimming around that final wild card is kind of, in a way, very remarkable.
It really is. And that really goes to show that even despite having the patchwork of the defense for most of the season, that this team is still still in the hunt. Why? Because we talked about it. This team knows how to score. This team is
for the most part.
And I feel like, I mean, especially when you get cylinders firing from the ones that you expect to score a lot of, your Dylan Guenthers, your Logan Coolies, Barrett Hayton, who coming straight out of the break, becoming the first UHC player to get a hat trick, from Clayton Keller, from a lot of those guys, right? Those are the ones you expect to have a good game day in and day out. And it helps that they're all still relatively young.
Yeah. And congrats, by the way. I don't think we've really talked enough about that. The first ever hat trick in Utah Hockey Club history. So it's a season of firsts for Utah. Hopefully a first playoff berth is in the offing as well. But
maybe.
That would be fantastic.
I know, right?
Robin, if we're talking about the playoff chances of this team, what gives you the most hope that they could sneak into a wild card spot this year?
I think, to me, and it goes with I guess what I just mentioned. It's those players when you get them on, I feel like it takes them a long time to cool off. Right? We talked about I talked about Dylan Gunther. Remember, it's like we joked around for a while. It's like, oh my god, he's on pace for like 172 goal season. Like it
Right.
was crazy, right?
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy how well he was doing. He did cool off for a little bit, and I think that kind of goes with just how the rest of the team was doing. But I think despite that, he and Cooley and Hayton have still, persevered through all the struggles, and I think it's that youth resurgence is what we need, right? It's what this Utah Hockey Club squad needs. It's that youth resurgence. And again, and by youth, I'm not talking about all the rookies, but despite Cooley being only in his second year, and I think even Gunther being his second full year, but no matter what, like these guys are the ones that are making a difference. And at the end of the day, I think these are the players that can make or break a playoff berth.
Absolutely. So, all right, before we wrap things up here, I am going to give you the key. There's only one. The key to the game against Chicago, and the Blackhawks are saying goodbye to a legend. We'll tell you who that is as well in just a minute. Tom Callahan, Robin Leano here with you on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Thanks so much for joining us here and making us your first listen each and every single day when it comes to the Utah Hockey Club. Robin, you can throw all the keys at me you want to this game, as many as you want, and they can probably all be very valid and very important keys. But this is my key. You ready?
Yeah.
It is simply special teams. Because of this, Utah's power play, 6 of its last 12, going back 4 games.
Okay.
But Utah's penalty kill, 5 of 10, same span, 4 games.
Yeah.
So 50% penalty kill is bad.
Yeah.
But 50% power play is good. So, but special teams, I don't know how else to frame it. The penalty kills got to be better. They really have to be better.
It does. And I feel like we're going to see it, them figured out a lot more now that the defense is figuring things out. And now it's going to be, which of your forwards can, have the ability to play a 200-foot game. Are they able to play back and be able to take those defensive assignments on a penalty kill when it's really necessary? But that said, Tom, I think it goes also without saying that Utah has shown, and again, you see how bad the penalty kill has been in this case the last couple of games, but Utah has shown that they tend to have a very even, more full, closer to 60-minute matchup when they don't take penalties at all. It's when the penalty kill doesn't even need to come out.
Exactly. And 5-on-5, I mean, that doesn't hurt anybody's feelings, but also when you're taking, even if you're not taking a lot of penalties, if you're giving up a goal and the other team's going 1 for 1 or 1 for 2 on a given night, that can swing a hockey game. So, which is why it's nice. Let's look on the bright side here with power play. If you only get one opportunity and you go 1 for 1 or you go 1 for 2, that can win you a hockey game. Yep. So that's nice to see that the power play is producing right now.
It really is. I mean, we just need to see, see the other side, pull their weight if necessary.
Yes. So special teams is my key. And Robin, I want to say, this is kind of funny. We don't often talk about the other teams, but just an absolute legend is calling it a career for the Chicago Blackhawks. You probably haven't seen this guy, but you've definitely heard him. And I'm talking about Frank Pellico. Frank Pellico has spent the last 33 years as the Chicago Blackhawks organist. And when the Blackhawks took on the Leafs at United Center on Sunday, that was Pellico's final game for the Blackhawks. He's been there since 1991 when they were in the old Chicago Stadium. Absolutely a Chicago legend. So it's not something you think about, but man, when you go into Chicago, the organ is so part of the ambiance and the atmosphere of being there, and the anthem and everything that happens in Chicago is always incredible. It's a great place to watch a game,
especially as fewer teams are hiring organists and they just have DJs now.
Right. Yeah, and it's all, hey, let's play the pop hits. And that's the thing is, and I remember as a kid, now obviously I'm older than you are. I remember when I would go to Buffalo Sabres games growing up in Buffalo, and the organ was an integral part of the game. It led the cheers, it led the charges, but it also played the pop hits of the day, all translated over onto the organ. And then the Sabres did a cool thing one time, and I can't remember the name of the organist, but they gave him, Robin, and this is probably the late 80s, a wireless keyboard to wander around the arena and set up next to fans, and they would occasionally show him out there just jamming away on the keyboard, playing tunes during the break. So I remember that. I don't know how long that experiment lasted, but it just always stuck with me. So
organist memories, or just hockey organ memories are always fun. Even though I feel like, and a lot of people know it, that this quote song no longer has a place in North American sports anymore. But growing up going to San Jose Sharks games, having the Hey song in a organ rendition as their goal song with the goal horn, to me, I think even to this day, when I hear the Sharks goal horn, that's the first thing that pops in my head.
When I think of keyboard stuff and growing up, for me, it was a lot of I do think of the pop hits of the time as rendered on the organ, things like Van Halen Jump, or, Rush Tom Sawyer, or something like that would be played on the organ, which of course Buffalo's a big classic rock town. Just things like that you would hear. The Final Countdown by Europe, which they still play, teams still play that going into overtime.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Just stuff like that. It was just awesome. And so Frank Pellico's been doing it for 33 years, and they brought the organ over. That's one of the things they saved from Chicago Stadium. They brought that over to the United Center, and it was the same setup and the pipes and all that. So, but yeah, Frank, happy trails. And, definitely his talents will be missed in Chicago, and just wanted to highlight that, Robin. I think it's a pretty cool moment.
Oh, absolutely is. And like I said, it's especially, even more so, like I mentioned, as we're seeing the many teams do away with the organists in favor of EDM DJs, which I'm not against, but it's that old school feel that everyone loves.
Yeah, it's unique to sporting events, so hopefully it doesn't go away completely. But we're pretty much going to go away for this Chicago preview. But Robin, any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
No, all I'll say is like I said earlier in this show, that to me, what my hope is that this is a quote statement, like actual, like a statement win, in the sense that it's, no question about it, Utah's the better team kind of win.
You got to finish off your opponents. Yes, you got to show that you are better, and you got to beat the teams behind you. I agree. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that'll do it for our Chicago preview here. And Robin, where can they find us on social if they want to reach out and comment on the show?
They can find us everywhere on social media. We are on X / formerly known as Twitter, on Instagram and Threads at LO_NHL Utah. You can find us on TikTok and Blue Sky at Locked On Utah Hockey. I am personally at Robin_Leano on X, as well as on Instagram and Threads over there. Same thing, but at Robin Ice Time on Blue Sky.
And I'm over on Blue Sky at Tom Talks. So Certainly drop us a comment here on the video side on YouTube if you want, but you can also get in touch with us that way too through social media if you want to chime in on the show or you want to ask us a question. We may use your question in a future episode of the show, and we've done that several times already this season and appreciate everybody's feedback as well. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in with us here. Hopefully Utah Hockey Club comes out with a couple of points tonight against the Blackhawks. For Robin, I'm Tom. Thanks for being a part of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.